Hi, and welcome back to Grassroots Crypto, where I like to teach people about crypto. In this video, we're going to be doing a bit of an update on THORChain. It's been a while since I've done one, last one here. And I had prepared some content. However, this article dropped this morning. So I thought I'd use this as a bit of a guide to go through and talk in more in detail about the areas of this article and what some of these things mean. After that, I'll go through some of the charts and statistics and stuff like that and explain a bit more in detail what they mean. Right, let's get started. So here's the report, good little overview. THORChain has completed the trifecta of swap, save, and lend, which is pretty cool. There's a whole bunch of stats here. Probably the biggest one is the volume, 114 increase in volume, which is pretty good. And that's been attributed to streaming swaps, which we'll talk about in a second. A lot of, as well as affiliates have been paid out, and we'll talk about how that's been paid out as well. So firstly, lending has been released. It was released a while ago. There's a whole Medium article. You can read all about it, or what happened, all the risk articles and stuff like that that's gone into it. FAQs, there's documentation, there's a video, which is my video over here. You can have a look. There's actually two, one with numbers, one without, and all the relevant details as well as some dashboards. So that's pretty cool. So a couple of issues when it started, but it's all ticking over quite smoothly. There's also some tweaks, which I'll talk about down below, required because the streaming swaps added so much more volume. Then we have streaming swaps, which has been released firstly on swaps only, so just normal, normal swaps. And that's been quite successful. That has seen quite a large increase in volume, which we'll have a look at in a minute. And what's really cool about streaming swaps is, like, normal swapping happens everywhere within THORChain, or pretty much everywhere. So you have normal L1 swaps. Synthetics is really two swaps because you're swapping from L1 to Rune, Rune to the synthetic. Lending is 4 swaps when you open, 4 swaps when you close. So streaming swaps is something that can be kind of like the icing on the cake or enabled on all the different features. And future features will also include swaps under the hood. So while streaming swaps is on just normal L1s and synths, it can be applied to any service or the primary services that are already in THORChain and the ones that come. BSC or BNB Smart Chain was launched, which is pretty cool. So now you can have BEP2 and BEP20 tokens. So there's an announcement here. Now we took a look at TOR. So TOR is you could say it's like a decentralized stablecoin. However, it's got a market cap of 0, and at the moment you can't get your hands on it. It's only used for internal counting. It's made up of these pools. There's been a change. Look there, where a lot of the internal countings has moved away from Rune into this USD or this TOR accounting, and TOR also accounts for the debt within lending. We say now that there's currently a market cap of 0 and you can't get it. There's current talks and discussion to perhaps put that out so it could be accessible, but that's something down the line. Do note that TOR, it's not something new. It's been out for 14 months or been utilized within THORChain since ADR 003 for about 14 months. It's just becoming more and more used in the back end for its accounting. So streaming swaps has been added for savers and lenders, which is really cool. Whilst it hasn't been actually enabled, all the codes there, and that should be enabled in the next 1 to 2 weeks. So just keep an eye out for announcements there. And that enables, say, for savers to put large amounts of BTC or Ethereum and get the benefits of reduced slippage, but obviously over a longer period of time. Same for lenders. When they're putting large amounts of collateral or repaying large amounts of debt, they're going to get those benefits there. There's a bit of a caveat here for loans, though, for lenders, to do with the amount of volatility. And the more volatility, you could say the more reduced what's known as the virtual pool is. And that means that the more volatility, the less benefit you can get from streaming swaps within lending. And there's a bit of a chart here. And this virtual pool depth, if you don't know, if you go to the lending docs, and you go to here, there's a pools endpoint. I can put all the links in the description below. And this will tell you the derived depth basis points. So this is 89%. And if you go to btc.btc, You can see here, this is 60%. So when you align that to the to this particular table, then you're not only going to be able to get 2 to 3 streaming swaps allowed for, say, the BTC pool. Obviously, that changes based on the degree of volume and how much trade activity happens across the normal pools, the BTC pool. But that's just something to keep an eye on, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. There's some documentation and GitHub references there you can have a look at. Savers for stablecoins. So you can get APY off of your stables, and they have to be TOR anchor designated, which in English means they have to be one of these. There's also some more code that says if you add another stable coin into this anchor pool, then that's immediately available for savers as well. But if it's not in the anchor pool, then it's not available for savers. So that's pretty cool. You can earn APY on your stable coins. So there's some changes to the actual yield calculations for savers. I think I covered this in my last update, but the higher it goes, the higher the synth utilization goes towards the cap, the less yield you're gonna get. There's a bit of an explainer here, but I'd be looking at this particular one. It tells you the APY here on what you're gonna get. I think the BTC is obviously more filled than the Ethereum one, so obviously you're going to get a little less APY. Understand that this percentage is backwards looking, it's not forwards looking, and it's dependent on the amount of trade volume which generates fees and stuff like that. So either way, that's more of an indication of what happens. The higher this number goes, then the less yield that's going to be given, essentially. Dynamic max anchor slip calculation. So this is to do with lending, and this particular parameter sets the period of time that THORChain looks at the amount of trade volume or volatility across a pool, and that's been increased to about 2 weeks, and then that dynamically changes the virtual pool depth based off the amount of volatility that's happened in the network. And that needed to be enhanced because of the streaming swaps. Because the streaming swap added so much more volume across the pool, the virtual pools are really shallow, much more shallow than what they should be, which would mean that traders wouldn't get a good deal when they're opening and closing a loan. So that's that particular enhancement there. This one is to do with, it's actually pretty cool, to do with DEX aggregation. So you can, when you send memos, which expresses the user intent about what to do a swap or to do a savers and stuff like that, you can add extra bits of information into the memo that can be seen perhaps on the outbound side of a DEX aggregation path. Bit hard to explain, maybe just look at the dev docs, but that's really cool for any interface that's looking at DEX aggregation. So this preferred asset payouts, I think this was just about to go on the last update. And this means that when affiliates earn, this money here, this particular fees, before it could only be paid out in Rune, and now it can be paid out in any asset they want. So it could be in a stable coin, it could be in Bitcoin, it could be in whatever. So when it's about 200% times the outbound fee, then it can get paid out. And that's because, if you've earned $5 of affiliate fee, you don't want to be spending $5 worth of fees to pay it out. You want it to build up before you get paid out. There's a 9 realms tracker, which I guess is a bit technical for new users, but this kind of gives you an idea of the network activity. So this is how many streaming swaps. This is what's currently outbound within the block. And then this is what's scheduled. This is, the amount of volume is becoming, I guess, a bit of a usability issue for the network because there's so much volume, the outbound queue builds up. So like this trade, although that's quite a large trade, could be waiting 11 minutes before their transaction is actually sent out. So we've seen this with normal swaps. These are actually some large amounts. We've seen this normal swaps where the outbound queue here is already full, so everything has to be scheduled into the future. Just for more information, this outbound queue is set on some parameters as well as the Rune price. So the higher the Rune price, the more the network can process on the outbound. Have a look at the security in the docs in the how it works, and then the security outbound queue for more information about the outbound queue. Bit of information about UTXO client refactor, that's great. Asset short codes. has been implemented, and there's some documentation about that. And that's a way to reduce the memo length because they can get quite long and quite complex. Some chains have limits or restrictions on how many characters can be inside of a memo. So it's all documented here. If you see weird memo looking things, particularly some of this scientific notation as well, then you'll be able to understand what that is. Changes to multi-node operators is quite an important, you say, security feature for the network, and it makes it difficult for any node operator to gain control, controlling share of an Asgard vault, which makes it more difficult for malicious actors to acquire controlling share of the vault. And what that means, kind of in English, if we go here, we can see that there are 6 Asgard vaults and about 18 members per 19 per Asgard vault. So to get control, you need 2/3 membership, or 2/3 membership of an Asgard vault, and then you can control it. So what that change does is a node operator can control multiple nodes. So let's say they're controlling 5 or 6 different nodes from one address. Then that change will ensure that those 5 nodes are distributed among the 6 Asgard vaults, so they're not all grouped within one, which reduces the possibility of a single actor to getting a control, or at least 1/3 or 2/3 control of any individual Asgard vault. That's obviously securing a large amount of value. So this one here means if you did a symmetrical addition as a liquidity provider and you only did one part of it, that's been rolled to an asymmetrical addition as well, just so there isn't a whole bunch of pending liquidity on the pools. Talk about planned obsolescence, which is all done except for the release of the Mimir admin keys, and that requires they're called Mimir v2 and a bit of a refactor and reorganization of the Mimir, which are probably not going to happen anytime soon, but there's a bit of a plan for it. There is also a deny list, which limits the degree of control any admin key might have, and that's listed here. So as an example, it can't change the max Rune supply and a bunch of other network specific parameters that aren't related to the ongoing operations. We'll talk about some of the things coming up. So there's memoless transactions, which actually does 2 parts. So one, you can send a quote in and get an actual reference number back, or a quote number, just like if you were to go to your tradie for getting some work on your house, they'll give you a quote and it would have a quote number. You can send that back and it has all the details. So that way you can have just like a 5-digit code in the memo, and then THORChain would know what you're talking about. And that reduces the memo length drastically. And then there's also memoless transactions, like there's no memo at all, which would be pretty cool, particularly for chains that don't have the ability to have memos in transactions. Then we have order books, which is extremely cool and a long-awaited feature that is implemented. The code's there; it's pretty much ready to go, and that will enable somebody to say, "I want to buy BTC or swap to BTC, but at a certain price," which is really, really cool. That will use swapping behind the scenes, so that will obviously generate income for the network, but then streaming swaps could be applied to that as well. So you can do trades with really, really low slippage through this order book mechanism. So order books with streaming swaps is extremely exciting from my point of view. Then talks about perpetual contracts, which is some of the more advanced, once you get away, like more advanced than spot trading. Cold vaults we talked about previously and was in the last update, and there's a bit of more of an overview of the Mimir v2, which said it's a fair bit of work and there's no real ETA set on that one. Then there's integration updates, and probably some of the biggest ones here is within Ledger Live, adding the THORSwap app. And here's Ledger Live. If you go here, you go to Discover, you can go to THORSwap, it's about 2 hours ago here. And this means that you can go trade, obviously using THORChain at the back end, your assets connected up to your ledger and stuff like that, straight within Ledger Live. So that's pretty cool. A lot of work went into that. Bunch more updates here, adding different features, which is really cool. Obviously THORSwap, like adding everything. And then there's AsgardX, which is support's been added for that. Picked that up, done a lot of work behind the scenes there. So I do recommend having a look at your free open source wallet there as well. So that's it for the report. I want to go through some network specific information here. So this is the swap count, and I've changed the timeline just at the start of the year, and you can see a steady increase in the swap count, particularly some more firm usage over here, and that's streaming swaps for you. Just on normal swapping, not yet on savers or lending, which obviously should increase the actual swap count as well. And we can see a large volume increase. I think it cracked 200 million worth of volume in a day a couple of days ago, but wasn't in the quarter, but hey, it's pretty good. And we can see volume increase as well. This is just the overall volume, was the swap count would count some of the streaming. So we can see quite a large uptick here. That's pretty good. And now obviously this generates income. I wanted to do, people found this useful last time, liquidity fees per chain. So again, we have Ethereum, then we have BNB and Bitcoin as the three most income generating chains for the network, and everything else is just kind of like, a bit of roughage around the sides. What's going to be interesting for me is to see BSC, to see the volume start for BSC and see that income generate, as will that replace the BNB, or will BSC just kind of stay down the bottom with everything else? That's going to be really interesting to see, because potentially it could replace BNB, and then maybe one day BNB will actually be discontinued. So then we have this chart, which is the LPs, which also includes savers in a way, and POL, and node earnings. And we interested in look at the breakdown between liquidity fees and block rewards. Because people ask, well, where do the fees come from? And obviously in some networks, it would just come from their own native token, which is not necessarily good or sustainable. So here we can see this decline of block rewards with regards to the overall network generation or fee generation for the network. That's detailed here when we look at this one, which is really good. We want to see this block reward, and it should be getting less and less over time. And the block reward amount, among other things, is set by the size of the reserve. So if the reserve pays out more block rewards, these overall block rewards per block will get less. As the reserve deploys POL, obviously it's shrinking, so the block rewards will reduce as well. So this is something to keep an eye on. We want to see this decline. We want to see more liquidity fees than block rewards coming. ILP exposure, obviously people are always talking about this. It's less than 500,000 Rune now, and hopefully expect to see that become lower and lower and lower until that either gets to zero, or you have a hard date before ILP is not on it anymore. This is the mint to burn for lending. When we think about lending, it has a look. Now there was a 30-day minimum period for loans before they could be repaid. And we can see here to date, about 35,000 Rune has been minted to close loans, which is really good. Obviously, you want to know the net, and this net amount of 1 million. I'm not sure whether that includes the current open loans or that's specific only for the closed loans. I want to see more detail on that, because that last number is really key. There are some 9 Realms dashboards here, which kind of, I think, are getting some improvement. I don't think this tells me too much. You do know how much, lending, it's the same number there, has been burnt, but you want to know, is lending effective for the closed loans? How much Rune has been burnt or minted for these specific closed loans? What benefit is there being? But that's being worked on at the moment. There's some other charts over here. If you just go to start, that has some lending specifics as well, because this is quite important to the network. So feel free to go have a look at that. You can look at loan repayments. You can look at the mint versus burnt, which we just looked at before, the assets and the breakdown and stuff like that. Then we've got the node operator specific stuff. So here you can see there's 94 active node operators with, I think it's 11 trying to get in. Also, the bond wars have started. As you can see, people have strategically put a set amount of bond, made that a little bit higher, which means all of these people aren't able to get into the next churn. If you go to here, it kind of tells you who's slated to get into the next churn. So if you've got 959,000 Rune, you don't have enough to become an active node operator in order to benefit from it. And this is where pooled nodes become really important in order to top up. So maybe you've got 950,000, but you know people that's got an extra, 30, 40,000 Rune lying around that want to get a benefit. And that's where, that can be added to the node, added to the bond in order to try and move up this list. There's, if you're interested in that, there's a channel inside developer Discord. Obviously, be careful and do read the documentation about that and ask for help before you go send large amounts of Rune. Right, so that's it. That's the video. Let me know what you thought. A bit of a different format, different way of doing it. If there's anything that you want covered, let me know in the comments below. I'll have all the links and stuff like that in the description below as well. Thanks for watching, and until next time. Bye.